Hi everyone! So according to Spike Psarris, one must be a fundamentalist Christian in order to not be an atheist and thus be unable to, well, apparently, describe the observable behavior of the observable universe. That's stupid, but we've been over it. It's about to get worse though, because apparently atheists can't even believe that the universe exists. Now, Spike is about to explain why, so I suggest you get your facial protection gear. Or alcohol. Or both.
So that was all to show that an atheist, if he's going to be consistent, must deny the laws of physics are valid. And now our final point, ultimately an atheist has to deny that the universe itself even exists anyway. We made an assumption earlier when talking about the creation of the universe that the universe exists today. Well, does it actually exist? Well, this is just kind of a silly question, right?
Yes, given that we can observe it, it clearly exists to be observed. Now, in fairness, that doesn't tell us what it is. It could, in principle, be a dream or a simulation or some other kind of illusion, or it could be the one and only absolute reality. But whatever it is, it exists.
Maybe not. If you believe the Bible, then you can affirm that the universe exists, because the heavens declare the glory of God, right? That means there are such things as heavens.
Assuming that heaven means sky in this context, you could just save a step and look up. I mean, if the world you experience with your senses is an illusion, then so is that book you're reading from, using your senses.
The logical conclusion of atheism, though, runs a bit differently.
As we've established, you have no idea what atheism is, so let me explain it to you. Atheism refers either to the lack of theistic belief, that is, the absence of the belief that there in fact is at least one God, or it refers to the positive belief that there are no gods. Either way, it says nothing about anything else, so an atheist does not have to believe that science isn't useful when it comes to learning about observable reality, and atheists certainly don't have to believe that there is no universe.
It could be the weirdest and most embarrassing prediction in the history of cosmology, if not science. If true, it would mean that you yourself are more likely to be some momentary fluctuation in a field of matter and energy out in space than a person with a real past in an orderly star-spangled cosmos. Your memories and the world that you think you see around you are illusions.
If true. Also, cosmology and science, not atheism. But thanks for stating that science implies or even equals atheism. Even I wouldn't go that far. You're a stronger atheist than I am, Spike. Might want to have a doctor look at that bullet hole in your foot.
This bizarre picture is the outcome of a recent series of calculations that take some of the bedrock theories and discoveries of modern cosmology to the limit. The basic problem is that it's hard for nature to make a whole universe. It's much easier to make fragments of one, like planets, yourself in a spacesuit, or even in the most absurd and troubling example, a naked brain floating in space. Nature tends to do what's easiest from the standpoint of energy and probability, and so these fragments, in particular the brains, would appear far more frequently than real full-fledged universes, or than us, or they might be us. Alan Guth, a cosmologist at MIT, and I mentioned his name earlier, he's probably the most prominent cosmologist in the country, who agrees that this overabundance is absurd, pointed out that some calculations from his atheistic cosmology result in an infinite number of free-floating brains for every normal brain, making it, quote, these are his words, infinitely unlikely for us to be normal brains, unquote.
Once again, the only one who said anything about atheism is you, Psarris. The math turns out the same way even if there is a God. But notice that he said some calculations, and that he agrees that this is absurd. That's actually the whole point, but we'll get to that.
So you think you're sitting here in this room and that you have a brain in your skull and that your skull is in a body and that you're sitting in chairs in this room, but no. Actually, you are just a brain floating who popped into existence a few seconds ago with all the molecules that happen to be arranged in such a way that you have memories, false memories, of your life from being a child up until a few seconds ago. You think you're hearing me talking right now, but you're not. That's all part of the illusion. And it's not even that you're a brain floating in the cosmos, because there is no cosmos. It's just you. You're it.
Since this is obviously unfalsifiable, it is completely irrelevant to our understanding of the universe that we actually observe. Once again, that's actually the point. But we'll get to that.
If you're going to be an atheist cosmologist who believes that something can pop out of nothing, the mathematics of that assumption don't produce the universe we live in. The mathematics of that assumption overwhelmingly, infinitely more likely, remember, produces this, that you are just a brain floating in space with nothing else.
I'll just put this here again.
And the mathematics for this comes from the work of a scientist called Ludwig Boltzmann. Thus, this idea is called Boltzmann Brains. And I know what you're wondering, I know what you're thinking, and the answer to your question is no. No, I'm not making this up. This is an actual problem in secular cosmology.
No, it's a problem in cosmology, period. It has nothing to do with atheism. But, Spike, didn't you say something to the effect of math and the laws of nature only work if there is a God? Well, math and the laws of nature make this prediction. So, if you believe in God and you're a consistent theist, you should accept it. But there are no consistent theists now, are there, Spike? See what I did there? Did you think that was dishonest of me? Kind of stupid? Well, in that case, I rest my case.
Can the Higgs boson save us from the menace of the Boltzmann brains? This is actually in the cosmological journals. Now, who heard about this in Cosmos or science media, science magazines, the rest of it, right? No. This is not stuff cosmologists like to talk about.
Actually, they do. That's why they write papers about it. I suggest you actually read some of them, because that paper you're showing right now is about how to resolve the problem within known physics. Here's the problem. If a model predicts that I am a Boltzmann brain, then it's not a good description of the universe that I actually observe. Because in the universe that I actually observe, this one, I am in fact not a Boltzmann brain. Now maybe I really am a Boltzmann brain, but that's pure metaphysics. If what I want to do is describe this universe, then a model that says I'm not even observing this universe is a bad model, and it goes in the trash. That's the whole point. And to hammer it in, here it is from one of the authors of that paper, Dr. Sean Carroll.
Now, Dr. Craig makes a lot about the Boltzmann brain problem, the problem that in the multiverse we could just be random fluctuations rather than growing in the aftermath of a hot Big Bang. This is a significant misunderstanding of how the multiverse works. The multiverse doesn't say that everything that can possibly happen happens with equal probability. It says that there's a definite history of the multiverse and you can make predictions. Different multiverse models will have different ratios of ordinary observers to random observers. That's a good thing. That helps us distinguish between viable models of the multiverse and non-viable models. And there are plenty of viable models where the Boltzmann brain or random fluctuations do not dominate. Furthermore, just as a little preview of coming attractions, I'm trying to write a paper when I'm not debating about God and cosmology. I'm a physicist, and I'm currently working on a paper that says that actually Boltzmann brains, random fluctuations occur much, much less frequently than we previously believed. It comes down to a better understanding of quantum fluctuations.
This one admits that their models produce an infinite number of Boltzmann brains, whereas there are zero likelihood for us to be ordinary observers.
Read the rest of it, jackass. Unless our universe is decaying at an astronomical rate. Hence, our observations suggest that this scenario is incorrect, and that perhaps our universe is decaying at an astronomical rate. Read it. All of it. The decay, which Carroll also mentions in his paper, which I assume you didn't read either, refers to the decay of the vacuum state. Basically, think of our universe as a bubble. Inside that bubble, there is a minimum energy level that we think of as vacuum. But we know that vacuum contains energy, and the amount of energy in vacuum is a property of the bubble, the universe that is. Outside the bubble, we expect the vacuum state to be different, and at some point that means a quantum tunneling event can cause the bubble to pop. The bubble popping, that is, the vacuum state decaying, means the end of the universe, and if that happens within tens or hundreds of billions of years rather than, say, Googleplex years, then there is no Boltzmann brain problem because no Boltzmann brains will have had time to form. Other cosmologists offer other solutions, some of which don't involve the mother of all mass extinction events. Suck it, Thanos. For example, new universes might spawn from the quantum vacuum of the multiverse at a high enough rate that while each one spends almost its entire existence in a state of heat death, populated by Boltzmann brains, the number of ordinary observers in the entire multiverse will always dwarf the number of Boltzmann brains at any given time. The point is, there are several possible ways to avoid the Boltzmann brain problem, and you know that if you would read the papers instead of just skimming through them looking for things that you think disproves science.
Now again, I had to dig deep in the cosmological literature to find this stuff. This is not something that is discussed very openly.
I'm gonna have to call bullshit on that one, Spike. I found all these papers you've presented within seconds each, and even Wikipedia has a well-sourced article on the Boltzmann brain problem. This has been written about in several pop science magazines as well. No one is hiding anything. You are either being deliberately dishonest or you are too stupid to type Boltzmann brain into Google.
As this non-Christian physicist said, people take it for granted that the physical world is both ordered and intelligible. The underlying order in nature, the laws of physics, are simply accepted as given as brute facts. Nobody asks where they came from. At least they do not do so in polite company. But even the most atheistic scientist has to accept as an act of faith that the universe isn't absurd, that there's a rational basis to physical existence manifested as law-like order in nature that's at least partly comprehensible to us. So science can proceed only if the scientist adopts an essentially theological worldview.
And I would completely disagree with this choice of words. I don't accept what I observe on faith, but as a matter of practical necessity. I have no other way to get information about the world around me. But I only accept it as long as it maintains some kind of internal consistency. That's how I would know if I were hallucinating. If my observation of this thing right in front of me was inconsistent with the behavior that I observe in other people around me. For example, if they act like it's not there, then I would have no choice but to question my senses.
So those scientists who are atheists, don't misunderstand me, I'm not saying an atheist can't be a good scientist. There are many scientists, good scientists, who are atheists, but they aren't consistent atheists. They aren't acting as scientists consistent with their worldview, because that would be impossible.
You've been saying that all along, but you haven't even attempted to explain how you get from not believing in a God, or even believing that there in fact is no God, to believing that there is no universe. You haven't even attempted to bridge the gap. Are you seriously telling me that if you hadn't read in the Bible that God created the heaven and the earth, you would walk outside, look around, stomp on the ground for a while, and still you would go, nope, I can't believe the earth exists? Don't you think that sounds just a tiny bit stupid?
The only worldview consistent with science and the world we see around us is the biblical one.
Right, because as we all know, the earth is flat, snakes and donkeys can talk, killing animals will cure leprosy, ghosts and zombies are real. If you stick a dead body in a cave over the weekend, it comes back to life. And there's an invisible wizard in the sky who will solve all your problems using magic, as long as you're a judgmental, bigoted, hypocritical, willfully ignorant asshole. Yeah, I'm sure that's consistent with some reality, but it definitely isn't consistent with this one. See ya.